Yes, indeed, it's time for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, sport, business and beyond. Tonight, British tennis legend Barry Cowan, who appeared regularly at Wimbledon as well as qualifying for the US Open at Flushing Meadows. He famously took seven-time Wimbledon winner Pete Sampras to 5 sets at the famous tournament in 2001. He also represented the UK in the Davis Cup. He hung up his racket in 2002, after which followed a long and successful career as a tennis pundit for Sky Sports. And I'm delighted to say that Barry Cowan joins me now. Hi, Barry.
Good evening, Mark. Thanks very much for having me.
Great to have you on the show. How did you get into tennis?
Yeah, well, actually, it was through my parents. And I've got an older brother who's 3 years older, who I was never able to beat. And I think generally, actually, it's the younger sibling that actually has an advantage because you're always sort of aspiring to beat your older brother.
You're punching above your weight.
Absolutely.
You've got the ultimate handicap.
Exactly. And it didn't. When I did play him, it didn't go down too well. I lost 6-2, 6-love, and I showed my anger.
What was the age gap? Between you and your brother, what was the age gap?
3 years.
3 years. So you'll have been playing, what were you, 10 or 11 years of age when you played him?
Yeah. And he was 13, so obviously, physically, I had no chance. But, it's sort of in the sporting genes. And actually, my niece is a really good golfer. So it's
And I think
nice
you were into hockey when you were young as well, weren't you?
Yeah, I played hockey. And actually, it's one of my big regrets as a tennis player because you have to go sort of full-time very early on. And actually, I think if I had my time again, I wouldn't commit to tennis as early as I did. And you have to give up the likes of hockey and cricket, which I think is a shame because playing other sports definitely helps your tennis.
Well, that's right. And when you got into tennis, there wasn't the support for British players that there is now. There wasn't the money, was there?
I have to say I had great support. And actually, given how expensive the sport is, my goodness, the sacrifices my parents had to make and the commitment you have to make.
So the cost driving you around everywhere to matches?
Yeah. And then the harsh realities. I mean, we only ever see, when we're watching Wimbledon, we only ever see the top players. What you don't realise is some of the places I've been to, my goodness, some horrors. But it sort of makes you, and you either say, right, I'm going to have to be tough. A lot of cheating, especially when I was a junior.
Really?
Yeah, South America. Oh my goodness, inventing ball marks. What do you do? I mean, you've got to play hardball, but I think actually it toughens you up. For the longer term. So 10 great years as a pro. I wouldn't want anything else, but it's brutal.
It is brutal. Did it come from you or from your parents to pursue the sport full time?
I think it's a really good question, and it's something that really frustrates me now, where I would say I was talented, but I wasn't incredibly talented. And I find it hard when I look at other people in sport who have more gift and God-given talent, but they don't have the application. And I think it's a real problem now, actually, with the sort of the iPhone generation. I think people don't have the same levels of concentration. Yeah. Some don't have the same levels of determination. And then you look at the people who excel. I mean, my sport, there's 4 in the men's, in the amazing generation we've had in Federer, Djokovic, Nadal and Murray, in no particular order. Yeah. And then I think some of the other women players, the longevity they've had. Serena Williams and Venus Williams. I mean, people were saying at 24, 25, they're not going to last. They were still winning majors into their 30s.
So the will to win, the work ethic, the application...
Yeah. And the physicality.
And you think some of that may be missing in future generations?
I think currently, yes. I think that's one of the reasons why. As great as... Nadal's just won his 22nd major and the second this year. And the big question that people often ask, for me, is... well, when is it going to be in the next generation? Well, these guys are incredibly motivated, self-motivation to still want to win. And I think sometimes some of the next generation, sort of the 25, 26, 27, 28, I don't think they have the same powers of focus.
It's quite... excuse me. It's quite damning, isn't it? It's a damning...
Well, they are incredible talents. So it's pretty hard to be able to match their intensity, but
of course
they've shown the way. So if you're going to beat them, you're going to have to almost work even harder than they do.
Well, yeah, what's going on with Roger Federer? Is he even human? This is a guy that wins Grand Slam tournaments. He doesn't look like he's broken a sweat.
and made quarterfinals last year and one knee.
Yeah.
I spoke to his coach at the end of last year, and he said, Roger, for 2 years, we didn't even have a proper practice session. No. And he still made the last 8 at Wimbledon. But it's not looking good, from what I heard the end of last year, the knee issue he's had. But I think he would definitely want to go out on his terms, I think, to play Wimbledon last year.
Yeah.
When, obviously, in unfortunate circumstances, his family weren't able to be there. I think he'd definitely make an extra push to be back again.
Of Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, Murray, who is the greatest of that generation?
Do you know what? It is a question that will continue, and I can't dodge it, can I? I think in terms of elegance and what they brought to the sport, I would say Federer. I think what he's achieved on the court, and I think the way he's carried himself off the court, and I think the general tennis, not the tennis diehards, because there are quite a lot, but there are a lot of tennis fanatics who maybe don't follow it week in, week out. I think they're drawn to Federer. But I would say the best tennis I've ever seen is from Djokovic. I think he will go down. I know Nadal's ahead of him at the moment, but I think he will go down as the greatest player. I still look at his body, and I think he can carry on for another 5 years.
The athleticism as well as the craft.
Yeah, I mean, a warrior. Do not write him off. Anyone thinks that, obviously he had a very tough start to the year, but I think actually it might help him in the long run, because it means you never lose the ability to be able to play great tennis. And when you've won as much as those guys have, you never lose the ability to be able to perform under pressure. So I think maybe that period of time away actually might add a few years at the end of his career.
It's bad luck for each of them that they happen to be competing in this era. Because each of those individuals, Federer, Djokovic, and of course Nadal, they would have been heroes of their own decade, but they all came at the same time.
Yeah,
but roughly the same time.
Yes, but I think actually they probably wouldn't be as good as if the other two weren't around. I mean, probably the one you feel sorry for is Murray.
Yeah,
because actually 3 majors with his talents, incredible achievement. But if one of them had just not been around, he might have been able to get 6 or 7. But I count myself so lucky that I've sort of followed their progress. First met Federer actually when he was 16.
Wow. And
he was a great guy then, but no, I'd never thought he would be the player.
If I told you then what we know now, you wouldn't have believed me.
No.
Was he just another player at that point?
He was talented, but believe it or not, he was pretty lightweight, and he had a great feel for tennis. But how he changed his mindset, because he had some anger issues that he had to sort of curb. He won Junior Wimbledon, 17, 18, and then took a little while for him to make that next step. But then, once he obviously had a bit of tragedy in his life, his first coach, Peter Carter, tragically died in a car accident, and that obviously hit him. But I think also maybe gave him a little extra strength.
Yeah.
And once he won his first Wimbledon in 2003, he became a new Roger Federer.
Speaking of Wimbledon, of course, you played at Wimbledon, that memorable match against Sampras. You beat the previous opponent, Mark Hilton, in straight sets. That was in 2001. Tell me about going into the Lawn Tennis Association with your kit bag, with your rackets, and just walking into that iconic venue.
What, for the Sampras match or just in general?
I mean, just I mean, obviously, I'm sure you've been, you've been in and out of there for many years, but going in as a competitor, getting ready for your next match.
Well, it was always a dream of mine. Actually, it was always a dream of mine to play the best player on the biggest stage and play my best match. And I was able to do that. And it was pretty nerve-wracking playing him, because the respect I had, but there's also a little bit of a side story to it that and I think it's a sort of a great lesson that I learned probably a little bit too late in my career. I practiced with him a couple of times before he had to play Wimbledon finals, Ivan Izovich. He wanted to hit the left-hander. So his coach asked me, I said, of course, why wouldn't you? But then the next time I saw him, he ignored me. And when you're a little young, you think, well, of course, it's Pete Sampras, he's not going to speak to me. But then as I got a little older, for me there was, well, I'm still a pro, and I think you should respect people. Yeah. So when I same thing happened before in 2000, asked me to play, I was in Canada, asked me to hit with him, ignored me the week after the US Open, and I thought, next time I see him, I'm going to force him to say hello, which I did.
Yeah.
So actually playing Sampras the following year, I think that little moment helped me. I mean, I still had incredible respect because I still think he would beat anyone on a grass court. Federer, even in his pomp.
Amazing.
But I think that little bit helped because when you're at my level, which was between 100 and 200, you're seeing these players on TV and you're going, there's no way I can achieve that. So you are a little intimidated. But thankfully I was able to play my greatest match against him. Unfortunately, wasn't able to win, but I couldn't have done anything better.
Yeah, it was an amazing, amazing performance. And you know that you'll always have that story, and you'll always have participated in the Davis Cup at Wimbledon. You've had a long career, you've travelled the world, and you'll have met many pros, of course, played with them, brushed shoulders with them. You'll have known Boris Becker. I guess he was probably retired once you really got into your prime. I think he retired in the late 90s, 98, 99, Boris Becker. Yeah. And what went wrong? This guy's now in jail.
Yeah, it's very sad. I've actually worked with Boris at Sky. And I would say, in terms of Boris Becker, the tennis player, I don't think, for me, anyone had more presence than him as a person.
Even from the age of 17?
Yes. And actually, he openly said, I never lost a match with a rain delay. No. Because in his mind, if he was losing, he could intimidate his opponent in the locker room.
Wow.
And I think that is always fascinating because in sport, it's kind of but you've got to find a way to try and get one up on your opponent.
Any which way.
Yeah.
Eating the banana slowly, fiddling around with your towel.
Absolutely.
Doing up your shoelaces.
Absolutely. Water bottle and all, which is what Nadal...
Bouncing the ball a few times.
Exactly.
Wow.
Take your time. But I think...
So is that what they call mind games in football? Is it like that?
Yeah. I mean, some obviously bend the rules a little bit further. I think going back sort of Ili Nastase and back then when they didn't have many microphones on the court, now it picks up most of the stuff that the players will say.
And that would be essentially, players trolling each other, right?
Yes.
Sledging, as they call it in cricket.
Yeah. I mean, it still goes on. I mean, look at Nadal. I mean, he will keep his opponents waiting. I mean, it's a Nadal time, and the time he takes between points. But if he's going to get away with it, why wouldn't he carry on doing? But sort of with Boris, I think that it's something that he was an incredible tennis player and earned a lot of money and was put on a pedestal. And I think sometimes maybe they don't have the right guidance, the right input at an early age. And I guess for it's such an unfortunate situation that's happened that, one bad decision leads to another, and then, obviously we find the position he is in at the moment.
Too much, too young?
Yes, but he's earned that. It's very difficult to say, well, you don't deserve it when he's won Wimbledon at 17 and defends it the year later at 18.
What about Djokovic, who did not reveal his vaccine status, which meant he was not able to participate in the Australian Open? We are where we are. We appear to be, mercifully, at the tail end of the pandemic. Will his career be damaged by this little issue, this little bump in the road?
Honestly, Mark, I think Novak's at a stage of his career now where I don't think that is the most important thing in his life. I think the most important thing in his life, and again, I think he's always had, here is someone who doesn't leave any stone unturned. What he puts into his body is 100% what he knows. And I think for Djokovic that he was obviously put in what he felt was a difficult situation. And it wasn't about getting major number 21 or major number 22 or Nadal getting ahead of him. It was about what he felt comfortable in, and time will tell whether, that was the right decision or the wrong decision. But as I go back to what I said 5 minutes ago, it's my belief that he will have the most majors. I know Nadal's ahead of him at the moment because I see someone who is still got the desire and in incredible shape.
And how about Emma Raducanu, the great new hope for British tennis? First of all, will she make Wimbledon this year? Because I think she's carrying a knock, isn't she?
It looks like she will. Fingers crossed she will. And it's been an absolute whirlwind last 12 months. And I think she has made some poor decisions in terms of firing coaches. But if you'd said to Emma 12 months ago, this is your year and this is what's going to happen, and you said that to anyone, this is what's going to happen at 18 years of age, they would say, please, where can I sign? Yeah. So I think last 16 at Wimbledon, the US Open, which was extraordinary to win 10 matches from qualifying without losing a set. But I think...
Flash in the pan, or can she do it again? Have we got a long career here?
Well, I would say from what I saw at the US Open, here's someone who is incredible mindset, is very tactically smart, but her level right now, for me, is not what her ranking is. My belief, it's just my opinion, there might be other people that disagree, but I think her ranking is around about 50. So her loss at the French Open to Sasnovich, if Emma had won that match, that would have been a great result. My concern will be that at age 18, age 19, when I look at the other players that have dominated in our sport across the men's and the women's, consistently they have coaches for that period. Those are the most important period of their career, 3-4 years. They have the same coach. And she's had too many coaches. And until she gets that sorted out and works on her game, and then the combination of her tennis improving along with her mindset, I think we'll be in pretty safe hands. But if she doesn't sort it out, the longer it goes on, the harder it will be for her to come back and achieve what she did at the US Open.
From a man who's been there and has got not just the T-shirt, the racket, the balls, the lot. Listen, great to have you on the show, Barry. Do come and see us again in the studio soon. Barry Cowan there, British former tennis ace and now top Sky Sports tennis pundit.